There's certain ones. You just don't
But that
question.
was automatic through workers' comp. That was wild.
Mhm.
I don't know if we're on.
Did we get a pass out in this? Huh? I think you were. Brian, before you make that, is there an agenda and pass outs or anything? I never got one.
Yeah, and we didn't get a packet. I didn't get a packet this week.
I got some emailed too.
Well, no, that's fine. It just reminds me when I see that envelope in the mail. Oh, that's right. Next week, next Tuesday. It reminds my wife.
So you guys didn't get anything in the mail?
Well,
You didn't get anything emailed to you either?
I got the email, so yeah.
I
I
got
You
just-
the
got an
minutes.
email with the attachments? Did it have
Yes.
attachments?
Yep.
All I just attached to mine was just the.
Yeah, that's the only thing that would have been with.
I'll float you along for some paper if you need some, buddy.
No, I don't need to. I'm gonna do it. This is technology, they call it. This
Okay.
new thing called the internet. I'm gonna get on.
I'm sorry, guys. I
That's all
thought
right.
That they had them. I know we emailed some folks
Yeah.
an email.
Yeah, I don't do it like that.
You don't use it like that? All right, so, that's the agenda for tonight. The only thing that's technically on there really is, a discussion on a possible text amendment. There were some minutes on there, but if you didn't get them, we'll push them off to the next meeting where you can get them and you can read them, cause I don't know why that you didn't get those.
I got my minutes. Did you get yours?
Yeah, I
You got the
like
minutes? You did get the minutes?
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah.
You did not get the minutes.
My email.
Okay.
It's my emails.
He got that, Charles got that, but he didn't get any minutes.
I didn't get that, but
I didn't get that.
I got that. I got it all.
You got it all. So it doesn't make any sense why some of you got some things and some of you got,
I looked through it at
that
the
doesn't make
office.
any sense to me.
You might have sent them in two different emails, and my email's a very sporadic thing. You didn't get them.
There was two different attachments on that email.
I think
Least it
everybody
was
said,
on there.
Charles did not get the minutes.
Are we on?
I didn't turn it on yet. There we go. It is on now.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call the Union County Planning Board meeting of October 3rd, 2017 to order approximately 7:05 p.m. For the agenda, with what we've heard, is there any additions or deletions to the agenda that we need to make with the one text amendment? Other than that standard, is that okay?
No, I'd move.
Ask for approval
I'd move to approve the agenda.
as presented. Okay,
I'll second it.
thank you. Appreciate that, Russell. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, thank you very much.
Aye.
The,
Don, if you don't have it already, can you make Charles, have a vote to make Charles a regular voting member tonight? Since
okay,
yeah.
right, Charles has to be a regular voting member. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My fault, Charles. I apologize for that. You have in front of you, or were sent in your email, the September 12th minutes of that meeting. If you have a chance to look at those, we ask for a motion to approve or change anything that you see that needs to be changed. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Second.
Second, Charles, thank you, appreciate that. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
It was 5
It was 5-0. Okay, the text amendment to the Union County Development Ordinance Utility and Public Service Facility is the next item on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Chairman. So, in talking with our commissioners,
we identified that there is a concern with our industrial zoned property, which we have very little of that. There's only a, yes, sir.
No, sir.
Dial 911. No, sir, not in here. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
There's a concern that some of our industrial zone property, heavy industrial HI, light industrial LI, could be used for utility purposes as opposed to being used for actual industrial development. And we have very little industrial development in the county, and very little land that is zoned for that. And so those uses are allowed as special uses in every zoning district, with the exception of heavy industrial, they're allowed by right, and light industrial, they're allowed by special use permit. So in looking at that, because they are allowed as a special use permit in every zoning district besides the industrial ones, staff felt like in order to address the concerns of using up our limited zoning that is under industrial classification, that we would request the board to consider having the major utility use removed from those zoning classifications. So you would see there would be no special use permit for major utilities in a light industrial, and there would be no use by right in heavy industrial zoning districts. Now, that doesn't prohibit those uses from being allowed. It just doesn't allow them to be used in those zoning districts. That was really more of an effort to address the fact that we do have limited land that is zoned for that possibility. This does not apply to Union County utilities. Union County utilities actually are covered under a different umbrella. There's a portion of our ordinance which actually allows for anything that is Union County government in pretty much every district. So if there's water lines, if there's a water tower, if there is a water treatment plant or a sewage treatment plant, those are allowed pretty much in every district. This would affect non-Union County utilities. So I want to make that distinction, because that is actually in our ordinance provision that allows those items in every zoning district. So that's kind of the crux of the concern that we were given sort of a charge to figure out how to address. I'll be happy to answer any questions for you. Ultimately, I think you will see some changes in the future that we will come back to you with some other items, and those have to do with solar and wind power generation. I think at some point in time we will bring some possible text amendments for that type of major utility use, but right now we're not prepared for those kinds of for that kind of discussion just yet. So can I answer any questions for you?
Well, I guess one question I would have, what are we looking for tonight then? Am I looking at this attachment, this allowed uses table that's here?
Yeah, so what you'll have in that table, and it's hard to, I'm sorry, it's not the easiest to read, but all the way over on the very top, you'll see where it has use category, and then down just before you get to where it says commercial in the sort of the brownish color, there'll be a line that says utility or public service facility. It has minor and major below that. If you look at the major line, you go all the way over to the right, you'll see that really what happened is there's a strike through where the S is, and there's a strike through for where the P is. And all that means is that the P won't exist there anymore, it'll be blank, and the S won't exist there anymore, it'll be blank, so those uses will no longer, if approved, would no longer be allowed in those zoning districts. So we call it a text change, but technically, really, it's a change to the table is what it is.
What about the highway corridor? Was there any conversation on,
As far as
Striking
not
that out as-
allowing it in the highway corridor, there was no conversation about that. We have a very similar situation. There's very little land that's zoned highway corridor,
Right.
but that was not a consideration. It certainly could be. You know, if this board wanted to recommend that that be considered as well, absolutely.
and when we're talking public use facilities, we're not only talking like a Duke Energy, we're also talking maybe even fire service or
No, now understand that, you know, public service facility or utility is not a fire station. That's a different, so there's a definition for it. It really applies to a utility scale type project.
like a Time Warner cable?
Yes,
or-
sir, it's something like that.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily a fire station, it's not, you know, it's not a satellite police station, it's really more of a water tower, water treatment plant.
Cell towers?
Yes.
Or is that
Cell
close?
tower
That's
is actually a
different- yeah.
separate category,
Right,
it's
right,
actually
right.
all by itself.
Okay.
So, yeah, so, I'll read it out for you so you can actually hear this. It's any above ground structures or facilities other than buildings unless such buildings are used for storage, and this is the major category. Incidental to the operation of such structures or facilities owned by a government entity, a nonprofit organization, corporation, or an entity defined as a public utility for any purpose, and that's under North Carolina General Statutes GS 62-3-23, and used in connection with the production, generation, transmission, delivery, collection, or storage of water, sewage, electricity, gas, oil, or electronic signals. That's the major name for it, and I mean, that's the name for it. And then under major utility, because that's the one we're specifically talking about, is utility and public service facilities that are not classified as minor, okay? And typical uses include, but are not limited to water and wastewater treatment facilities. Now, again, those that are not owned by the county.
Sure.
The county is a separate high voltage electric substations, utility scale power generation facilities, including wind, solar, and other renewable or non-renewable energy sources, and utility scale storage facilities such as water towers. So it's specific to those kinds of uses.
Okay.
And it's only major, it's not minor.
Mhm.
Minor is still allowed. That's a smaller defined type of use. And again, if you guys, we understand if you want to take time to think about it, you want to come to table this to another meeting before you make a recommendation, that's fine. This was brought to our attention. The only way for us to get it in front of you is to bring it to you and talk to you about it. So we understand if you want time to think about it and come back, that you tell us how you want to handle it.
Well,
What
I
are the
think,
wishes of this board?
I think we might end up tabling it, but I think it might be beneficial just to have a brief conversation on, just the shoot from the hip kind of thing that we've seen it and what are going through our heads. I mean, for me, I'm looking at, okay, why don't we go into the highway corridor for that major as well and strike that S at least. I don't know what a minor would do as far as the need for the minor to be in that district. There might be a need because of transmission of that, so it's a cheaper way to provide that, and I just don't know.
Right.
Maybe turn those into from permit to special use, or not at all, because now you're adding that back onto the county. So it taking your guys a job and taking one away, but then putting one back.
Putting one back, right?
Yeah, but those are my kind of thoughts. If we're talking about trying to maximize the use of our industrial and highway corridor, that might be something for us to consider.
Absolutely.
Russell, any comments?
No.
Charlie, do you have any comments?
I just have a question for Brian. Brian, could conceivably a wastewater treatment plant for a large housing development that would be privately owned be
It could
one of
be.
these things?
It could be, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, understand that typically in those situations, it's part of the residential development, so that property would have been zoned residential and not zoned heavy industrial, because residential by itself is not allowed in our heavy industrial zoning district. You can't build a subdivision in our heavy industrial district. So in those cases, most of the time what you'll see is the developer will come in and say, I got a subdivision I want to build, and in conjunction with that, I want to put my package plant, my treatment plant in there with it. So that would be a special use permit with the subdivision. So we wouldn't worry about that taking up any heavy industrial zone land, because the subdivision can't take up heavy industrial
You
land.
get a place like a processing plant where they need to do some processing.
It could be something to that effect, though. If you did have a processing plant and they had to have a packaged facility, it could affect that, yes, sir. Absolutely.
And you say a solar farm right now is sort of an up in the air type thing?
We've had some discussions about how do we handle wind and solar and those large scale. They take up a lot of property, those types of facilities. I think what we'll do is bring something back to you in the future that addresses that kind of power. Right now, those are part of major utilities. So it would stay in that classification, but you wouldn't be able to do it in heavy industrial. You wouldn't be able to do it in light industrial or highway corridor if you add that to it. It could only be done in residential zoning districts with a special use permit. So far to date, the 3 solar farms that have been approved in the county have all been on residentially zoned property with a special use permit. They've not been on heavy industrial or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. Someone could say, I've got some heavy industrial property, I want to put a solar farm on it, and they could apply for that. Actually, it'd be right. It would be by right. There wouldn't be a special application for that, for a solar farm.
How long do you think that solar question comes back? I mean, if
We anticipate that it'll probably be at the earliest November and probably more like December, because what we're having to work through with our legal department is how do we segregate solar and wind kind of out from under the major utility category without creating any problems. So they're helping us figure out how to do that. And then what we're doing is doing some research on maybe some model ordinances that are being used around the state to address those specific types of uses. Because there's a lot of solar going on in North Carolina. It's not bad, but we don't have any real defined regulations for solar. It's a special use permit, and that's pretty much it. But there's some model ordinances out there that kind of say, lay out, here's the things you should be looking for, here's the things you should have. So we're doing some research on that right now.
Another question, if you were to have an industry that wanted, if we were to vote to have a strike through on these two columns, and then you were to have an industry that wanted to put solar panels on top of their manufacturing plant all around their facility so that they could get a little bit less of a carbon footprint there, what would it mean?
So my interpretation of that would be that that is not specific to generating power as consumer consumption. That is generating electricity or power for your facility. Just like if you put one on your home and you want it for your home, that's fine. That's not what we would call a utility scale use. Now, if someone came in and said, I'm going to fill my building up with them and I'm going to sell all my power back to the power company, then yeah, we'd call that utility scale. But if you're really trying to use it for your facility, we wouldn't count that as a utility scale. We would just consider that part of your project. But we'd need that very clear and very specify what they intend on doing with it.
Even if a portion of it was sold back to the utility?
I think if it was a portion of it, we would not consider that still utility scale. Now, again, you're going to tell me you're going to sell back most of it, that's okay. That's kind of, if you say, look, I'm going to keep 70% and I'm going to sell 30%, I think we would define that really more as the local project. If you're going to sell 70 and keep 30, that's more utility scale. That's my opinion of that.
Patrick, what are your thoughts?
Those are all very good questions. Very
I've got
good
one
questions.
question, going back to Charles's comment. Are there any subdivisions in Union County that has a wastewater plant on it that would be affected by it?
There are subdivisions that have a package treatment plant, but this would not affect it because we're only removing this from heavy industrial and light industrial, and those subdivisions aren't zoned that classification. They're zoned residential, so it would not affect those developments.
I don't have any further comments or questions. So,
I guess my
Your
suggestion
thoughts?
might be to table this matter until we get some, guidance from legal on the separation of the solar panels, if that's gonna be separated out. Instead of trying to change classifications maybe twice, it might be better just to wait to get the bit of the package, and then we all know what we're excluding from those zones.
is there anything urgent that this be passed
Well,
tonight?
I mean, to be honest with you, it really depends on if someone came in next week and decided they wanted to put some type of utility in heavy industrial. We can stop that today, to be honest with you. If
I gotta
this
make a
board-
call.
if this board took an action and said, we recommend, yes, you do it, the commissioners still have to take action, which at the earliest would be November. So someone could literally file an application to do a solar farm, a wind farm, or a wastewater treatment facility on heavy industrial, and there's nothing we could do to stop it.
So I wouldn't say there's this like great rush to do it, but obviously the longer we wait, the more open it is something could happen.
Well, that-
Again, we're okay if you guys want to table it. You need to be able to feel comfortable with whatever your recommendation is. Yes,
And
no,
it sounds to me
whatever.
that you guys hope to have something on that by December meeting.
We're hoping we will have, I would like to say November, but I don't want to promise you November.
Well, it sounds like you already got 4 applications on there.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't promise you November because
Sure.
we've got a lot going on, so.
So if we do it in December, or if we get the package delivered and have a recommendation or a non-recommendation, then, somewhere after the holidays, January holidays, the commissioners then have it to go from there,
For
so.
consideration.
That is very possible.
If we had this plus the other that's coming in December in one package, there wouldn't be any more to have to work with, would there?
What else, do we have anything else that's outstanding, any other? We do have one, which has nothing to do with utilities, but we do have one in which legal is trying to assist us with, and that is how we define permits within our regulations. Remember, we had that discussion about under text changes and permits, and there was some discomfort with how open that language was. We went back to legal, and they're trying to help us craft something. It's got a little more parameters to it, so we're hoping we'll have that text change ready to come back to this board maybe in November, December, depending on when we get that back from legal. So we could certainly package all those together if the board wanted to.
I think we've had some good conversation, good comments on this. I'd like to ask what are the wishes of this board in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I'd move to table this matter until staff can provide a package that would include any modifications to the ordinance regarding wind and solar in those zones, and discuss it when staff is ready.
Okay. Chris,
Second.
we have a second from
Did you want to
Charles.
add the highway to it also?
The what?
The highway? You were talking about the highway before?
Oh, yeah, and to talk about the highway corridor, whether that be struck from the table of allowed uses.
Okay, motion has been made and second. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. Ayes have
So
it.
the motion includes wind and solar and the highway corridor.
And consider it.
Right, and consideration of the highway corridor being stricken on the major products for utilities and public service.
What we'll do, since there, good questions about the differences between, you know, an actual utility versus a property owner who's putting panels on their property. We'll get you a more defined answer about that. We had some discussions on that internally, but we'll get you an answer for what would we specifically define as utility versus a single user use.
Based on what we've heard tonight, I'd also like to make a recommendation to staff if we could have this package, I would say at least a week.
Yes, sir.
And I'm, that's not being critical, but
You-
we have
you
some
should
very
be
good
critical.
questions and comments come up here, and maybe we can be prepared and can move through
You
it.
should be critical, you should get this information a lot sooner than you do. So we will take care of that.
All righty, we appreciate the conversation. Brian, appreciate you bringing this to us. Our next item on the agenda is the planning staff report.
Really not much to report, but the commissioners did okay our appointments for the two study committees. We are still working on negotiating those contracts and getting that together, so I think that group probably would start maybe till November, probably more than likely December, to get the contracts, to get the other appointees to those committees. But they did take that action, so our guys have been approved to be on those. And so as soon as we can get all the paperwork done, get the committees formed, we will start in on that.
One question, if I could, on that. Is there a possibility that we could, working with both Robert and Russell, we could get a board meeting date set for when they give us an update? You know what I'm talking, I mean, like if they go to a meeting, the next board meeting, they would give us an update of what happened at that meeting.
In other words, go ahead and work with each individual on reporting back with them.
Yeah. If we could.
Do you want to just, once they start, when they're gonna meet, do a standing item, report status on,
Steering committee.
However they wanna do it, however y'all wanna do it.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Is there two of us that'll go to that then?
No, Robert is on you're on the Carpo. Robert, I believe, is on the Indian Trail study, and Charles is on the Marshall steering committee study.
Forgot Charles, yeah. So, Russell, you weren't here at that meeting, but we went ahead and agreed on it.
Yeah, that's fine. I've served on that before.
I know you have.
Yeah.
I was hooting you.
Thank you.
Because I told you you'd send a note that you volunteered,
Yeah.
so, which I did greatly appreciated that. So,
And
Anyway.
we'll make sure Bjorn gets you some information about when the next meeting for Carpo is.
Okay.
And gives you a schedule for that. I believe they meet every other month, and they usually meet on the third Wednesday, but I'll have him send that to you. So you
Okay.
also the same request, on the November meeting, if we do have 4 pieces coming up to where we can really dig into that and make sure we've got some solid questions to ask or any concerns, et cetera.
And just to confirm, you all still prefer to get a paper form? I mean, we will send it to you by email. I don't have a problem with that, but do you
long as I get
also
the email.
still prefer to get paper form?
Yeah, no, I don't, I don't save the stamp, save the paper.
So you
The
don't-
email's
you don't
fine.
You don't want paper, so let's see.
I think if you just put in there, if you receive this email, reply back. That way y'all will know that we got the email.
Russell, you like paper or do you like email? It doesn't matter to us one way or the other.
I'll take the paper.
Okay.
I'm an old.
Settle down in the gallery.
I didn't get it. Now, she may have sent it to me, but
And then,
I got partials.
Partial information.
Yeah.
and when did you get it? Whatever you got, when did you get it?
I don't have it in my, I've already put it in my Union County file. I got it within a day or two when she said
September-
she's gonna send it.
September 29th at 4:50 PM.
I was out of town, so I didn't get it till.
Charles, did you want paper?
Email's fine with me.
And what is the best email for you?
I have only the one.
Okay, so you only have one. Okay,
correct.
all right. I thought you said you had multiple ones. So, all right, so only one. And then Patrick, which one works best for you, paper or
Paper.
Paper. Okay. And we'll get with Robert and Clint and find out what they want.
Any other comments, Dick,
No, sir.
from you guys? Okay, Brian, from you?
That's right.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
So thank you very much, Patrick. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Who's
Okay,
the
we
second?
are officially
Who's
adjourned.
second on that one?
You can let me be the second.
Okay, Charles is second. All right, let me turn everything off.
I'd like to take the floor for.
Stop.
Turn this off.
All right, gentlemen, good to see you.